another Forgotten Audible Finds, and today we're going to talk about an album that I've said before is an album that you've never heard of. It's one of the greatest albums that you have never heard.
Yeah, just don't even call it one of the greatest Christian albums you've never heard. It's one of the greatest albums you've never heard.
Yeah.
Because the album, there's some albums you know, they're a slow build. Oh, well, I like this track, and I like that track, da, da, da. This album does not do that. You put the album in, I like that track. Oh, and I like that track. And on and on and on until you get to the end of the album, and you're sitting there going, it's what's known as what I call a perfect album. Because there are albums, like I said, you don't really care for some of the tracks. For whatever reason, either the music isn't good enough, either the lyrics aren't worth anything. But this album is perfect, and it also has that, for lack of a better term, pop feel. Because, and I really don't call this a pop album, but it has the pop feel because pop music is designed to be catchy. It's supposed to catch your attention and you remember the music. And that's exactly what this album does. I don't have to sit here and listen to each one of these songs that's on this track. All I have to do is look at the titles and automatically the music comes to me. And that's what's so great about this album.
Right. Well, like I said, we had different ways of getting the music at this time, and we were getting a overfluctuation of the Christian music. By 86, and I really stress this, Christian contemporary music outsold country music and jazz music. It was one of the top rated selling albums, but then we'll get in the 90s, it will go up in over 100% market by this time. And at this time, Ojo and Gene Eugene are making their studio and coming out with quality Christian musicians, and we're working with groups like working with such industry like the Tooth and Nail Records, which was coming in there. But this album really comes out of nowhere because I heard about Undercover and very little bit about them because, if you wanted Christian punk, there's Undercover, and there'd be pictures of the guys with somebody else, and they'd recommend Undercover, but never heard much about them. They were a regular at Cornerstone and places like that. Altar Boys, on the other hand, received they had a whole show just devoted to Altar Boys on TBN and places like that, and they were like the Holidays and groups like that. They were out there and people knew about them, especially what they were coming, what Mike Stan did with that group. But Undercover, they had 3 albums before this one.
No. 3 albums. Talk about the change. Yeah. Okay, the first 3 albums were strictly punk, very in-your-face lyrics. Absolutely no doubt that the first 3 albums are Christian albums. No. They go away for about a year and they come back with an album called Branded. And Branded is when they changed from what you would consider a punk band to, I just say they skipped New Wave and went to alternative. Yeah. Well, because New Wave is not as...
A lot of people consider Branded as the first Christian Gothic album.
Right.
And so if you want, influence of where you get Savior Machine and groups like that, you would go back to Branded. Branded, and like I said, I don't know why I picked Balance of Power. Balance of Power, I guess, musically is a far superior album.
Oh, yeah. It is.
But Branded, on the other hand, is a more significant album because more people were affected by that album, of the change and their willingness to do a risk like this, and also the content, because at this time, there was a lot of things with Branded. I get people coming with Branded, when I was going through a divorce, this album picked me up, or I was dealing with death, this album was the album I lived with. And that's what Branded was about. Branded said, which it was affected by, Ojo's relationship, and then same way with the relationship with another person in the group where his wife died, and the other, like I said, wife left him, and so Branded comes about, and more darker album, and of course you get the change up of vocalists right there, so you get what we know as Sim, and from then on, Undercover says from then on that is who is Undercover. That's Ojo, Sim, Jim, and Gary. Yeah. The lineup, as far as Ojo concerns, the lineup before that, nobody cares. But he says if you have Ojo, Sim, Jim, and Gary, you have Undercover. And that's what they said. If they do anything on the side, it's something else. And there are side projects that Sim does, there's side projects that Ojo does, there's side projects that Gary does, and there's side projects that Jim does. And those projects are named different things. You can look them on YouTube, and these are obviously talented guys. But what's so amazing about Ojo is he's a keyboard player. Mm-hmm. And if you listen, like I said, the first two albums, you got this pogo. I call it pogo punk. Is what they used to call it. I think it was. Well, it was a da da da. Whereas Altar Boys was your gut level music, and I think that was tough because you had the Holidays and you had Altar Boys, which was Altar Boys did really well, and I'm so glad that they had their own thing going. And I love when groups don't try to copy other groups, but they have a lot of influence from The Alarm, a lot of influence from groups like that. But Undercover is like, I had no idea what to expect from this. And when I listened to this album for the first time, I was working a paper route at the time, and I'd listened to this album while I was throwing out papers, and it blew me away because the dark chords, where it went, and at the same time, metal was really... Here's the thing. At this time, everybody wanted to do metal. Metal and Christian music was just getting... As soon as Stryper hit, to hell with the devil, everybody wanted to go that route. Fire, it's like On Fire, Petra's On Fire. It was just a hard kicking album. And all these groups you thought... And so when you're picking up Undercover, I just didn't know what to expect. I consider Undercover would be... Technically, if you go to Boys and Girls Renounce the World and Branded, there's what we call thrash punk on there. And the difference between thrash punk and, I'm trying to think of a group that defines... Ramones punk. Let's call it Ramones punk. Because I don't want to use the other group. But a difference between thrash punk and Ramones punk is thrash punk is more hardcore. It's more metal. It's less chord progression. Let's say a lot of times it's just three chords over and over again, and there's a lot of yelling, and that's thrash punk. And there's, in fact, I think we call it pig punk or something like that, and you'll hear that all the time because you get groups like One Bad Pig and groups like that, because that's thrash punk, man. And when God Rules comes out, was dun 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 dun. That was your thrash punk. God rules, God rules. So if you're thinking that when people listen to Balance of Power that you're going to get God Rules, which is probably their first hit, if you want to say, that was the song they played at Cornerstone over again. Everybody, if you get Balance of Power and you thinking you're going to get God Rules, you're not.
No, it's as a matter of fact, this shows their... Well, I think somebody said about them is we saw them mature. They were the band that we saw mature before.
Yeah, we saw them grow
because there's other bands like for instance Daniel Amos.
Yeah.
The difference between the first album of Daniel Amos and their second album is miles apart. But the difference is that when they did their first album, they just decided to take a risk and do something completely different on their second album. And actually, it was not one thing, but it was two different things. And so they took it just a little bit further from country to southern rock, to like Eagles rock. They did that, and then they decided to do a little rock opera. And that was the second album. And after that, Daniel Amos just progressed from that slowly. Whereas Undercover, it's worlds away. I mean, it's just worlds apart from Boys and Girls Renounce the World and Branded. So when they went to Branded, it's all of a sudden, this is not a punk band anymore. And let me explain something about the difference between secular punk and Christian punk, is that Christian really got late in the game in punk. By the time Christian punk actually come out, secular punk had pretty much played out, and it kind of infused into what we call new wave. The other hand of this, though, if you look at, especially when you're talking about your Calvary Chapel bands, your California bands, they were instrumental, however. They might have been late in the game of punk, but they were instrumental in helping alternative music to be developed. In other words, they were early in the game with alternative. That's why I would consider this to be more an alternative album than I would consider it to be new wave. 90s would be nothing for a new wave Christian album to still be out there. But in the secular world, new wave had already run its course to the point that it was starting to do a lot of hip hop, this kind of thing. Whereas in the Christian world, these bands like Daniel Amos and 77s and Undercover, they were looking for the next thing, and they were already starting to develop that. So by the time you get to Balance of Power, where they've gone through Brandon and they did a little EP, and then of course they released a live album. By the time they get to Balance of Power, they've perfected that to the point of making, like I said, a perfect album, where every track on there is well done. You may not sit there and go, well, I understand that track, but you will say, I like that track. And the importance of that is that you'll actually listen to that track to see what that track's all about.
Yeah. One thing about this versus, Brandon, I think, was more about personal struggle. Balance of Power is more about the world struggle, which is so different.
And the struggle in the world. Man.
Yeah, the struggle in the world, because basically the album Balance of Power.
Right.
And this is what we're talking about. Is I stress to people all the time is the Bible is about government. That's what it's all about. And Balance of the Power is talking about government, and it's talking about individual government, and it's talking about those things. There are some songs on this album Bernie Sanders would love. Supporters would love, because it's got that kind of thing. And then there are some songs on here that Catholics would really love on this album. There are some songs that, strong Christians who are dispensational Christians will love on this album. But the point is, the Balance of Power is a shift. It's a shift of power. And it's such a very good name for an album. If you go into the name itself, that should have been an alert in your mind that this is not like every other Christian album out there, because like I said, we're getting a fluctuation of different Christian artists. We had one guy, he got us Imperials and DeGarmo and Key and Petra, but on the other hand, we had the church library, who provided us the Holidays, Altar Boys, and Undercover, and artists like that. But for us to get Daniel Amos, we have to go buy it. Go figure. We could get Striper and Petra. Yeah, those are real easy to get. Go down here and get Holidays, Undercover. If you don't get it down, you just gotta go buy it. And that's the truth. I mean, you couldn't go. I don't know any libraries. The Christian libraries had the Undercover. It was hard to even get it at Christian bookstore. And if they did, you know, the albums were like 2 or 3 years of age.
You want to say that?
Yeah.
Go to Lifeway and you can find classic Christian music there. I mean, you'll be able to find your Keith Green. You might find a Larry Norman album or two. You might find I'm trying to think of some other Imperials. You might find I mean, you know, some bands or artists that are no longer with us or no longer working. Rich Mullins, you'll find those at Lifeway, but you won't find these guys there. And there's such a controversy with these California groups. There's something linked to them that I think they're just, some Christians are just not willing to deal with. And that's what I like about this particular album. When I put it in, like I said, the music automatically grabbed me. And then I'm sitting here going, okay, now I'm listening to the words, listening to the lyrics.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everything, every time, like I said, when you get the metal time, because, I mean, we expected every hard rock Christian band to have this metal. One thing is, we'll go off the differences, is vocally. Number one, you had to have a high guy to do your lyrics. So it's like you had to have somebody who would scream like really loud because of the Led Zeppelin thing. Number one, this doesn't have that. You had to have that 3-chord or 4-chord progression. This wasn't like it. This had piano. It had organs in it. You really didn't hear those kind. There was an acoustic guitar at the beginning that you could hear. You hear so many instrumental things that you just didn't expect on a hard rock type band at this time, because everything was so cookie cuttered.
Well, another thing is
quickly
that,
put in the studio.
Well, another thing, if you think about it, though, the music's slower too.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of your metal at the time was going towards a faster pace. I mean, even when we're talking about This Means War by Petra, that's a very fast album. But when you're talking about Balance of Power, it drags. And that to me is even more significant in that we're dealing with music that's designed in some way to go beyond that. Because the fact that I love This Means War, it's no surprise. But the fact that you like this, despite the fact that it seems to drag out, it seems to take longer to do what other metal type stuff would, which, like I said, was going into automatically something different.
Yeah.
Which, like I said, is significant in that it was helping develop some alternative styles of music.
Yeah, well, and like I said, this is the 90s is coming out, and this kind of goes towards where the 90s were going. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I personally think the heavy metal, glam metal, or I would say, lasted till 91, 92 era, and I want to say, because I mean, you had still your
Metallica was still in there.
Well, Metallica's not really.
Well, I know, but I'm saying though,
your darker metal, yeah,
but I'm saying with Metallica
80s,
though, you still had those clingers on that are trying to be.
Well, I mean, if you look at the peak of the glam metal, which I would say 83, 84, and they kept on going, so they had a nice, almost 10-year run.
Right.
And but on the heels, Nirvana comes out. I would say their peak about 92, 93. That's where the music started changing more, where it's a different generation is getting shot at. I mean, 10 years later, that's what's going to happen, and that's the way it should be. That's the reason why it's so sad nowadays. You're not seeing that transition like it used to. It seems like music to me is stagnant for 20 years versus there was, like I said, with Nirvana coming out. at least I can say, hey, wow, there's a pick of change there in music. Same way with this. This says, okay, we're going this other way. Okay, you guys, that's fine. But that's one day it's going to stop. It's not going to be cool anymore. And something else is going to come in there. But like I said, with the vocals, you get a darker vocalist, which was already established and branded. If you heard branded, you were expecting this. You're getting darker music, a lot of keyboards. Ojo Taylor, if you're a keyboardist, you might as well be used. There's no sense in that.
He also played bass.
It's like watching Skillet and seeing how slowly their keyboardist gets kicked out and it's being replaced by cello player up there. But that's not what they were doing. This is different. This is an album they took a lot of time going over lyrically, going over the way it is. What Sim brought to, I gotta say a lot about Sim, and this album here to me started where Sim started his own thing. There is no other, and I have to say this, and I hate to say it, there's no other vocalist in Christian music that can advert to saying this is, no, I take it back. I would say Terry Taylor's got his own thing, but there's not that many vocalists said that's a Sim Wilson thing, because this album establishes what Sim Wilson did differently from any vocalist that was out there. This is a Sim Wilson style thing. What is amazing about this album is there is openings, and this became a mainstay for their next album. There is openings where they will play almost the entire chorus or verse at the beginning, then go into the song, and then have a Sim Wilson outro vocally. That's decided this has worked, and it did work. And a lot of people say that repetition is a good thing. In this, it is a great thing. Because we learn, he'll tell you, one of his favorite Undercover song is So Wonderful. Mm-hmm. And that is a repetitive song. And it's so great. And it's just simplistic to the point where people just get so emotionally brought into a song. And that's what they established right here. They perfected it right here on this album. But to start it out with, they start a slow catching you. And I think this is a great thing. So we'll go track by track unless you got anything else you want to say about the group.
Oh, I did want to, because I always want to promote these guys because, it's like I was telling somebody the other day, you have no idea how much I owe these guys. Or just bands like these guys. Yeah. Because, when you didn't have, when you didn't have people to connect with, these guys were there and you felt like that you had a connection. The Christian music, there's a reason why I still listen to Christian music. I mean, I know people, I know fellow Christians, they don't really listen to Christian music. Of course, I think it's because they've never heard of this kind of stuff. Yeah. It's because they're over here, and they're sitting over here listening to stuff that it's so basic. This is not a basic album, but anyhow, I want to say this, give a little shout out for this. Sim Wilson is currently in another band. I've not heard it yet, but I am interested in finding out more about it. But not just because Sim's in it, but there's a couple other artists. It's kind of like a super band. It's called Lithium Saints, and it has Jesse Sprinkle from Poor Old Lou, and Todd Olson of The Waiting, which I love. The Waiting is one of my favorite 90s groups. I just want to give a shout out about that because I'm sitting there going, I'm excited about that. I want to find out more about that, and hopefully maybe be able to get some of their stuff as they're bringing it out. But that's where Sim is right now. Yeah.
And as like I said, when Sim wasn't on Forum, I mean, people knew. I mean, he to me is probably one of the most important vocalists in the Christian.
Well, he had his own style. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just the whole thing. He's got, and like I said, I would be excited to hear this.
And I think that's what attracted me was one thing is the vocals on this, because it was like you said in the metal. You had this high pitched vocal. I give you some, John Slitz or the lead singer of Bloodgood or Michael Sweet,
yeah.
all high pitched vocalists, and you have this more probably real tenor versus a soprano. I mean, you have almost an alto.
Well, I mean, he can get pretty low.
He gets pretty low, and he's
I mean,
down
it's
there.
perfect for this album.
Yeah, if you're going to start, you got to go down. And
you
when you're getting down to D minor and different chords like that, which is obviously your Gothic more tunes, you're going to have to go that route. It is, but the idea of bringing other instruments,